Okay, welcome to the Investigative Journal on this June 29th, 2015 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. And you can catch my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Past three shows, or two or three shows, we've been exploring the fact that there's a lot of information and a lot of people all of a sudden catching on to the fact that maybe we've been buffaloed by NASA and the powers that be about even the shape of our planet. And it brings up an interesting subject, and I've called upon a guy by the name of Ron Skiba to enlighten us about what he's researched in the biblical view of this, and going to the Bible as an authority on whether the earth is a circle or a sphere. And so let's get back to Rob on I believe this is part 3 or part 4 on the Investigative Journal.
You could have that illusion. And I say, no, that's not true. I created this animation right here in a software called Poser that allows me to create 3D imagery. This is what's called a point light right here. I can adjust the attenuation to this ball of light so it only throws so much light, however much I decide that I want it to. The biblical model says the sun's moving across a flat plane. Okay? Well, if the sun's over this obelisk, guess what? It's casting a shadow straight down. But this same ball of light is casting a long shadow on this one. And as the ball moves, guess what? The shadows change. Okay? So I just disproved that right there, that it's the only explanation. No, it's not the only. Carl Sagan, it's the only explanation is that we're on a ball. No, it's not the only explanation. You know, the biblical explanation says the sun moves. But see, what happens is people like Eratosthenes, Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler, Newton, when these guys started putting, and then later Lyell and Darwin, started putting forth theories that started to call the Bible in question, all of a sudden, you know, the devil's extremely patient. Okay? Whatever he knew before Christ came, whatever the devil knew, you know, he did whatever strategies he had to do to work with at the time. After Christ came and did what he did, you got to know the devil started kicking his plans at the high gear to try to screw up everything as quickly as possible. And you see the disciples themselves saying, hey, people have come in, false Christ, you know, creeping in unaware, you know, trying to change and preach false doctrine and stuff like that. And, you know, Marcion, and then later you got Constantine, and things go completely off the rails after that from a religious standpoint. Well, then you get to, you know, characters like this and start calling the biblical account of creation into question. Well, if you destroy the foundation of Genesis, the whole rest of the Bible is sitting on that foundation and the creation that God created. So if you can destroy this foundation, how can you trust anything the Bible says? So if you think about it that way, the motive is easy. If the devil, if this is true, if we really are on a flat Earth, I can see it. So in fact, it boggles my mind that people can't figure this what the motive would be, because with Lyell, we started questioning the age of the Earth. You know, he starts coming up with this theory of the stratus of rock represent millions of years and all that stuff. And he was influenced by Lamarck or something like that, who started to come up with an early theory that later Darwin built upon regarding evolution. And Lyell was influenced by Lamarck or whatever his name is. And Darwin's influenced by Lyell. And Darwin comes up with this whole idea that we come from apes. You know, in fact, I just heard something recently. Somebody posted on my Facebook that NASA means Nazi American space apes. It's what NASA stands for. Nazi American space apes. Okay, but all we ever hear, everywhere we go, is monkey man science. That we evolved, as Kent Hovind would say, from goo to you by way of the zoo, you know, over millions of years. And that we are on a tiny spinning ball going around an average sun and an average solar system and an average galaxy among trillions of galaxies in an ever-expanding universe. In other words, we're nothing special. Whereas the flat Earth model, the biblical model, the way it's described, is we are it. We are center stage, main attraction. There's nothing else but us. Everything is here for our benefit, which explains the anthropic principle that even the evolutionary scientists will say, you know, if anything was off by, you know, X amount of degree or whatever in either direction, this wouldn't be possible. we wouldn't be having this conversation. So, I mean, even the secularist knows that there is an anthropic principle that makes everything seem to be perfectly situated for our benefit. But that becomes exponentially increased, that idea, when you consider that we are the terrarium of God, that he's looking down on. We're the, the ant farm that he's enjoying, So I totally see why the devil would want to get us to question that. But it, not only that, if the flat earth model is true, evolution goes out the window. It's gone. But so does ancient aliens. Because right now, evolution is bankrupt. I mean, you got Richard Dawkins saying, well, intelligent design, yeah, but it could be that aliens came here and, seeded our planet and evolution took place from there. Well, I mean, there are no ancient aliens in the flat earth model. There are angels and there are humans, period. And, of course, the rest of creation we have here. But, I mean, you don't have Arcturians or Pleiadians or, any of that. That all goes out the window. So if I'm thinking conspiratorial, if I put my tinfoil hat on and say, okay, if there's a grand conspiracy, I can see how things were set in place to break one paradigm, the biblical paradigm, to destroy that. The Luciferian elite of the world, who are the ones that control everything that comes out to us, Joe Blow, the masses, they are following Lucifer, who wants to get us to keep our eyes off of God, because there's a great deception that's coming. And I have to wonder if that's not why this flat earth thing is. I mean, nobody was talking about this 5 months ago. And now the internet's on fire with it. People are like, marriages are breaking up and families are going, I mean, everybody's talking about this all of a sudden. Could it be that there's a reason why all of this is coming out right now? Because we know that disclosure is coming. In the fringe Christian world, a lot of guys, Tom Horn, L.A. Marzulli, Putnam, lots of people have been out there talking about, Exo Vaticana and all that stuff. That somebody knows that there are others out there and they're coming. Well, in the spinning ball in an ever-expanding universe idea, it's very plausible to think about other life forms out there. And they may show up, and the deception may be so great that it could deceive even the elect. Well, but if the elect are believing Scripture and taking Scripture for what here I am preaching myself right now. If we are taking Scripture literal and believing what it says, we're not going to be fooled by the great deception. Now, even when I'm believing in a spinning globe, I'm not buying the alien thing. When they show up, I'm thinking angels anyway. But do you see how the enclosed system obliterates evolution and ancient aliens? I mean, it blows it away. It makes the great deception, if this is indeed part of what the great deception is, null and void. It doesn't work. So for it to work, the devil has to put, his motivation is to put things in place over centuries to get us to be softened up enough to believe it. If you would have tried to pass any of the stuff that we talk about off right now in the first century, they're not going to buy it, But, later, over time, 1,500 years ago, I love that quote from Men in Black. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. I love the way he says that. And he says 15 minutes ago, you knew you were the only one here. Imagine what we're going to know tomorrow. It's a great line. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but to me, that explains motivation. Now, in the meantime, think about this. The web of lies that has to happen to support the original lie. Whatever lie, it requires more and more lies, especially as more and more things become known. You've got to tell another lie to cover up whatever somebody thinks they figured out. Well, you got Donald Rumsfeld saying we have $2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon on September 10th, 2001, the day before the budget analyst office got hit in the Pentagon. Right. Okay, well, you could do a lot with $2.3 trillion to perpetuate a deception. Where's all that money going? When you look into and this is one of the next blogs that I'm working on, the budget for Apollo, oh, dude, in modern times, it's trillions of dollars if we take into account inflation. And then you got, there's some really good documentaries you can look up on YouTube. A guy did a really good thesis on the movie The Shining that Stanley Kubrick did. and he breaks it down, showing how Stanley Kubrick is literally telling you in your face through the allegory of The Shining that he was the one who filmed the Apollo landings, that he did it.
Wow.
Fascinating video. So, I mean, there are many rabbit trails in this discussion, but motive for me is not, I mean, I understand motive, why they would do it, and how it would benefit them to do it. Because look at what they've done to society in general. I mean, prayer out of schools, creation's not allowed to be taught in schools. Every museum you go to, every movie you watch, every TV show you watch, it's evolution everywhere you look. And evolution, breeds people who question or, become agnostic or atheist and throw God out. And if you watch that, I told you about it earlier, but if you go on Netflix, there's a series called The Universe, and I think it's episode 12, season 1, God in the Universe. You will see the agenda. And at the very beginning of that, they even right from the beginning, they say, the biblical model is a snow globe, basically. It's a flat earth enclosed in a dome. I mean, they tell you that. This is what it was, And incidentally, when they say the ancients believed, they do this scene, a reenactment of these native people, and as the camera kind of follows, it's like an aerial view of these people walking, and the camera tilts up to the horizon, you see the Tower of Babel or Ziggurat in the background. So it's in your face all the time to get us to question and doubt God and the Bible. And that's why I'm praying. I'm like, Lord, at this point, it is just, I'm even asking myself, why I'm holding on to the globe as much as I am, as much as I've been learning. Yes, there are things I can't figure out, and that's part of it. But the other side of it is like, Lord, I want to know that I know that I know that I know. I want to put my finger in the hole and know that your word means exactly what it says. Because when I get that convinced, forget it, man. You can call me whatever names you want to, but you're sitting on top of Mount Ignorance. You're condemning without investigating. And I've only been at this for 2 months, nonstop for 2 months. There are other people who have been doing this for decades that are finally now relieved that they can actually talk about it in public without getting stoned. And I'll tell you, yes, I have my detractors, but I would say, it's maybe 1 or 2 out of 10. And the rest are either intrigued and looking into it for themselves. Some are just hardcore. We're flat earthers, dude. I'm like, well, God bless you, man. Good for you. But I've been getting emails and phone calls off of Facebook, aside from Facebook, where people are saying, hey, and some rather high-profile people, I'm not going to say who, but they're like, don't mention that I'm who I am and that I'm into this, but I've been questioning this for a while too, and have you considered, and they're feeding me a lot of stuff, and that's where I really came to the conclusions I did on geocentricity. It's a fascinating subject, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely is. Wow, you've blown my mind again. I think every time we do an episode, but especially with this, and because there is so much scriptural evidence, and yeah, I'm definitely gonna be thinking about this for a long time, I think. But that's good. That's why I love doing shows like this, because I really want to show, people that are watching the show, it's okay to talk about this. A good example, like now, Hollow Earth isn't as taboo as it was, say, 10 years ago. Hollow Earth is generally accepted. You can, I believe in Hollow Earth. There are different variations of it, but I believe that because of Scripture that there is something to that, and I can say that really without fear of too many people maybe a couple people will email me about that, but I really don't think so, because most people in this whole thing hold to some form of a Hollow Earth model, and it's not really, there's not that same emotional response. But now if you bring up Flat Earth, all of a sudden it gets real personal real fast, and there's an emotional response to it. I think when Hollow Earth was in the church was really started to become a topic of discussion, I think it was the same thing. I wasn't really around. that was before I started really looking into this stuff. But from those who have been researching it for a long time, from what I've been hearing, it was like that too. It used to be like you just don't talk about that because people will get upset. So I think it's interesting that people are more willing to accept like something that science is against, like Hollow Earth, but when you bring up flat Earth, that's like a you just don't go there. But it seems like there's a lot more. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just to say, I'll give you the same challenge that was given to me, and that was try to prove the globe without any sources or without anything coming from NASA, government, or the military of any country. Okay, because we already know what country in the world has a government that we can trust.
Right.
None that I can think of. And the military of every country answers to the government. Okay, so those two are out. And NASA, I've just shown you just a few things. Man, I could spend half the night showing you reasons why we shouldn't trust NASA.
Yeah.
But also, when you look at people like Jack Parsons, who was way into the occult, founder of Jet Propulsion Laboratory, I mean, this guy was like Aleister Crowley's like buddy, literally. I mean, he was like a disciple of Crowley. And look at what he was into. And when you look at Project Paperclip and the Nazis that came over that became the foundation of the scientists for NASA, and then you look at all the weird things taking place in the 1950s that I talked about earlier, leading up to the formation of NASA and after what happened. And by the way, when we started going up, okay, here's Russia. Russia was beating us in the space race, right? And then all of a sudden we passed them and they just gave up. Well,
right.
You really? No, they didn't just give up. They went to Antarctica almost 60 times. It was 40 or 60 times. I think it was 40 actually. They spent the rest of the time while we were allegedly going to the moon in the 60s and 70s. In the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way up into the 90s, Russia was doing expeditions to Antarctica. Something like 40 expeditions.
Wow.
So, and Doc Marquis and I were talking about the Luciferian elite and the governments of the world and the script that they are following, that Albert Pike or whoever wrote it laid out. I mean, Russia's not our enemy. It's the World Wrestling Federation. And I told the story last night when I was talking with Doc, but as a kid, the World Wrestling Federation would come into town and do their thing at the Springfield Civic Center, and we'd see, Hulk Hogan and against whoever the opposing side was. And the drama, it's like, soap opera for men, They would have this drama set up that, these guys are arch enemies, and the drama's been building up for weeks and weeks, and, this is the grudge match or whatever. And, they go at it for, an hour or two or whatever. And, you pick your side of who you think is, the good guy. And then after the wrestlers would do their thing in Springfield, there was a restaurant in Chicopee where I grew up called the Hukilau Polynesian Restaurant. That's where the wrestlers all like to go there whenever they were in town. And so if you wanted to meet the wrestlers, you'd go to Hukilau, right? Well, at the Hukilau, you see all these guys you just saw beating each other up and allegedly hating each other, getting drunk together, their arms around each other like, man, when you cracked that chair over my head, that was great, man, that was a good move, yeah, toasting each other. They're totally playing a game. It's drama. It's a play, okay? Once you understand that, then all of a sudden you realize, Putin and Clinton and Bush and Obama and whoever else you want to talk about, they're all bunk buddies. They probably hang out together at the Bohemian Grove and the Bilderberg meetings and stuff and laugh
right.
And the rest of us. The whole world's a stage and we're being fooled. And the governments of the world do everything they can to perpetuate the drama so that we always have somebody to hate and somebody to kill. And so we're all distracted by everything that's on the news right now while they're over here doing whatever they're doing to advance what Doc Marquis says is a 7-point plan to advance the New World Order step by step. And we're being gullible enough to believe it, and actually we're financing our own slavery.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. Some people have, like I said in the last part, or in the first part of the series, the previous part, people had more questions about this than they did the first show, and it's interesting, and I'm sure that you've come across some of these. I think some of these are probably fairly common, but I mean, they're still good questions. let me find where I got them all written down here. Okay. Eclipses. Somebody asked about eclipses. Like how does the the shadow being a circle and the only thing that can make a shadow like that is a sphere. How does the whole idea of eclipses work with like a flat Earth model?
Yeah, that was one of two things holding me to the globe. The two big things. There are others like meteors and comets and asteroids that I don't understand how that works in a flat Earth. So I have minor ones and then the major ones. The two major ones that were holding me to the globe is the Coriolis effect, which includes the spinning of the stars in opposite directions. I can understand Coriolis effect at ground level, affecting weaponry and long range, but it only seems to work with like bullets. It doesn't really work with cannonballs and other things. So, I had some issues with that. But the other one was the lunar eclipse. When I started looking into the lunar eclipse, I found that Scripture says that it is a lesser light. It doesn't say that it's reflecting the light of the greater light. It is a light to itself. It is a light that rules the night. Now, Monkey Man science tells us that the moon is just reflecting the light of the sun. But Scripture doesn't say that, and neither does the book of Enoch. Enoch, in fact, goes even further into describing the heavenly luminaries, not just the stars, but the sun and the moon. In fact, it goes into great detail about the fact that they generate their own light, including the moon is its own light generator. And there's a guy out there, Crow 777, I think, Crow 777, I think is his YouTube channel. I haven't spent a lot of time on his site. He's got some very interesting observations that appear to at least insinuate that the moon may be a rear projection system. What do I mean by that? In corporate video, where I used to do a lot of corporate events, we would set up rear screen projector screens. And the screen is like this, the audience is where you are, and behind the screen, we have the projector that projects on the screen, so you see it here. So the projector's not out in the audience. Rear screen projection. He has observed what appears to be a refresh rate going across, like a digital refresh rate, going across the face of the moon. I haven't looked into it enough to confirm or deny that. I'm just saying what this guy's done, and you can look up videos for yourself. But I just started to think, okay, Lord, your word, your canonized text says that it is a lesser light that rules the night. Whatever you want to think about Enoch, whether it's scripture or whatever, look, it's endorsed by the scriptures enough to be quoted from it. So in my mind, at least it carries that authority. It tells you point blank that the moon has very specific light that it generates for itself. So I thought, okay, well, how does a self-projecting... we know the sun is a fireball, so it's emitting heat and light. We also know that the light from the sun is very different than the light from the moon, and actually has profound different effects on living organisms, the frequency of the light. So there's definitely some differences there. And the moon puts off a cold light, and the sun puts off a warm light. And reflection doesn't seem to work like that. If you ever play with mirrors and stuff reflecting the sun, I used to do stuff with mirrors and magnifying glasses and burn like caterpillars and stuff, So, reflection doesn't really seem to work in that regard. So I was...
Okay, well, that's not too nice, Rob. I don't think you should burn caterpillars. But anyway, you were young and foolish, just like a lot of us when we were young and foolish. And I could tell you a young and foolish story when I get back on the Investigative Journal. On FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal, and before I get back to Rob Skiba and exposing the what I call the circular theory, he was interviewed by Josh Peck, and they're giving kind of a biblical account of this on the research they have done. I'm sure there are people out there who have done their own research. If you want to chime in on that, contact me at gregbeacon@gmail.com. That's GregBeacon.com. If you've listened, I got a few things to say, though, before I continue. I got an email today from Leo Zagami in Rome. If you go back to my old shows, you'll see the stories I did on Leo. He asked how I was doing. I said, fine. I'd love to I'm perhaps visiting Rome again one day. And he invited me out to dinner to the local osteria. So that's, you know what? Even if we disagree, we can still have dinner in Rome together. That's the way it goes. Passive-aggressive Americans, I find there's many of them, never say what they mean or mean what they say, and then they go back and they argue with you. But anyway, that's my thought for the day. And Rob was talking about his childhood transgressions, and we all have those. Those poor insects, they always seem to get the short end of the stick, don't they? Rob was talking about how he used to burn the wings off a caterpillar. And I grew up on a farm, so I respected all animals, little, big, except for insects. I wasn't too happy. I remember one time I'm running into the hayloft, and I got attacked by wasps. Oh, boy, did that hurt. So they're not living up to their end of the bargain either. These little insects, you know, the ants that crawl around, try to ruin your food, they're not living up to their end of the bargain. Now, let me tell you one of my childhood transgressions when it comes to insects, and I think this is a rather good one. I can't take all the credit, though. When we were in grade school, about 3rd or 4th grade, I got bored in school. I went to a Catholic grade school. I think this was in Sister Mary Angelica's class, and she hung me up in a coat room rack with my coat on after she caught us doing this. But anyway, I thought I'd let you know that I'm human just like Rob, and I'm sure you guys got your child and girls got your childhood transgressions. When it comes to these insects who really aren't living up to their end of the bargain when it comes to treating us very well. Spiders, you know what? They hurt. Ants crawling all over my food. Wasps biting me, and you wonder why we don't like insects. Well, they don't like us too much. But anyway, flies. Now, they're annoying, but you know, when they attack you sometimes, you know, there's always that one fly in the room that drives you crazy and you can't get them, right? And you go around with a paper rolled up. You miss it. The dog goes crazy thinking that you're hitting him and you got a mess on your hands. But anyway, these flies can be terrible too. Well, When we were in grade school, we got so bored that we decided that during recess we would catch flies. So we catch these flies, right? And we put them in a bottle, and we put holes in the bottle, and we leave them there for a while. Then we decide, well, what are we going to do with these guys? So we came up with this idea. I can't believe I'm wasting time on this, but what the heck? Everybody likes a good story. And we're in Sister Mary Angelica's class, 3rd or 4th grade. And so we decide to race these flies. How are we going to do that? Well, first we got to make little saddles that can fit on them. So we cut out little saddles of paper, and then we made a rider to go on the fly. Then what we did is we made a racetrack, and we couldn't have a straight one in class, so we would take paper and make a kind of a race area from one desk to, there were like 4 of us that did it, that will go from one desk to the other desk to the other desk. So then we had to figure out, well, how are we going to race these flies? We've made the saddles, we got the riders, and we colored them. Some were yellow, blue. We had 4. So we started out with 2, but we ended up with 4 before we got caught. But here's how we did it. We figured we had to take the wings off the fly. Otherwise, he'd fly away with the saddle on, right? Or we couldn't even get it on. So we got the saddle on the fly, and we had to take his wings out, which is cruel when you look at it. But you know what I said about them living up to their end of the bargain. They're always annoying us as well. I guess they're not pulling our teeth out or our eyes out or anything. But anyway, I don't think I'd do it again as an adult. But anyway, I'm sorry, fly, what I did. But I wasn't the only one. There were 3 of us, 4 of us. And so we finally and we had to figure out names. So we called them Stony Burks. And there was some TV show back then, cowboy show. And so there we go. We had our fly races. We got caught by Sister Mary Angelica. And she hung me up in the coat room with my coat on for 20 minutes. So that's my punishment for that. And she did that to my other buddies who were involved in the Stony Brook fly race. But anyway, back to, today, let's get something a little bit serious. NASA today, every day I hear on the Weather Channel or somewhere news, another folly going on at NASA. Well, they launched a rocket today that was supposedly carrying all of the food and necessary items for the people up in the space shuttle. Guess what happened? It crashed after 2.5 minutes into the ocean, just like all the other ones did. But this time, they had to report it because it crashed 2.5 minutes after it went up. Now, whether they planned this or not, they stated that this was the company that's going to is going to send people up in orbit. Now, I'm going to go up with that company, sure. Yeah, that's right. Then they said, well, it was carrying all the supplies for the space shuttle people, but don't worry, they have another 3 months to go, so they're not in danger. Well, first of all, there is no space station. Second of all, they're not up there. Third of all, it's another NASA lie. But anyway, I just thought I'd report that to you. Let's get back to Rob Skiba talking about the circle Earth.
Thinking, okay, it clearly looks like it's a sphere, or at the very least a half sphere. We don't know because we've never seen the other side of it. And that's always tripped me up too, because I'm like, the rotation seems awfully weird if the moon and the sun the moon and the Earth are both rotating, that it's rotating at a very specific way so that the same face is always, it just seems, I've always had trouble with that even on the globe model. But yeah, regardless, we don't know that it's a sphere because I don't know that we've ever been up there. It looks like a sphere. I've looked at it many, many times through telescopes. It looks like a 3-dimensional sphere. Some people say this is a hologram. I don't buy that. I've looked at it enough to believe myself that it is a solid 3-dimensional object. If it's generating its own light, though, without fire or anything like that, I mean, how would it generate its own light? Well, I don't know if you remember this, but a few years ago, and people couldn't Google this, NASA bombs the sun. NASA bombs the moon. They launched a probe supposedly into the moon, and it apparently rang like a bell for an extended period of time with sensors or whatever. Now, of course, it presupposes that we actually put probes up there that did that, so take it for whatever you think. But NASA themselves are putting forth the idea that the moon is hollow. So I'm thinking, well, I was looking at a lighthouse, and the way a lighthouse has a spinning, rotating light on the inside of it, a circular light that goes around. And so I created an animation. I thought, what if there was a circular light on the inside of the moon, and the moon is hollow, and the moon has somewhat of a semi-transparent, opaque, but semi-transparent exterior. And I created this as a
Call, click, or
oh, brother.
stop by Greg's Infinity today when you're in the market for a luxury.
Okay, we got a little problem here.
Kids,
I'm going to have to go back
we love to
and check this out because we lost Rob Skiba somehow. And now we're back to him, so here we go. Give me 1 second here.
Whatever their stickers say,
I've
they'll
got to
all
get rid of
lose
this.
suction.
They put these
because
commercials on now.
Their filters clog.
But anyway, we're back to Rob Skiba. Sorry for the break.
If there was a circular light on the inside of the moon, and the moon is hollow, and the moon has somewhat of a semi-transparent, opaque, but semi-transparent exterior. And I created this as a
Call, click, or
oh, brother.
stop by Greg's Infinity today when you're in the market for a luxury
Yeah.
vehicle. Experience.
Okay, so I created a ball that has a black and white surface to it. You know, half the ball is black and half the ball is white. And I spun the ball around thinking, okay, what if the light was the white part? And if it's a uniform opaque light? And so, there's an idea. Now I put that in space. Okay. Then I put a semi-transparent surface on it. And then you end up with something like this. A self-illuminating
Wow.
with a spinning light on the inside of it. Now, is that what's really happening? I don't know. I'm just, this is called, the scientific method is called testing, coming up with a hypothesis and coming up with a theory and testing it. Now, at least in three-dimensional modeling, it works. And then, as I'm making this, and I'm kind of searching for ideas on this, I saw there's Uncle Milton's moon phase. This right here is a toy for kids that does that. It's Uncle Milton's moon in my room.
In My Room presents Moon in My Room. See the moon come to life in your own room with brilliant moonlight and authentic detail. Activate it with the remote control and see a different lunar phase each time you touch the button. Choose from 12 different phases of the moon. Crescent moon, half moon, full moon. You decide.
I'm going, okay, if Uncle Milton can figure out how to do that, surely Yahuwah could figure out the same thing if he wanted to, But, I mean, this is like, I'm going, okay, Lord, is this confirmation? Or, I found this, right after I had made my animation. A self-illuminating moon that creates its own phases. So you can go get this.
Wow.
Or apparently, I guess they got this at Walmart. Uncle Milton's moon in my room. So, I don't know. Is that proof of anything? No, but it's certainly compelling and interesting.
The Sea-Doo Spark.
So, now, what about the lunar eclipse? The lunar eclipse is still kind of tripping me out a little bit. The solar eclipse, I don't really have a problem with because the moon could still be doing that, in my view.
Right.
However, in the case of the lunar eclipse, supposedly it's the Earth, the moon. Okay, if the sun's over here and the Earth has this kind of cone-shaped shadow, umbra or whatever they call it, and the moon goes into it, that's what supposedly creates the blood moon effect. But there are a number of documented cases in history where the moon went into a blood red lunar eclipse phase while the sun was still up.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time. It's rare, but there are a number of cases, and people don't believe me. Go look it up for yourself. Lunar eclipses, the sun up at the same time. That there have been enough cases. If even one of those cases is true, how does that work? How do you get? Because the sun has to be here, the Earth has to be here, and the moon has to be here for that to work. But if the sun and moon are both up visually, then the angles aren't working right.
Right. Wow.
So there's what I found when I was looking that up, and I don't remember if it's Rahu or something like that. There's a Hindu belief, Rahu and Raku or something like that. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up again. I stumbled on it like 2 weeks ago. That they have a belief in a dark sphere, a dark planet, that is the cause of the eclipse. And they even say it's not the moon going in front of the sun, that it is this dark sphere, planetoid, whatever it is, that is doing that. Now, okay, I don't know. I mean, but there's this ancient belief that there were these two dark spheres. I mean, you got the sun, the moon, and apparently these two other dark things that are what caused the effect that we see as a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse. Maybe it's just myth. I don't know. But I'm still searching that out myself. Wow. The lunar eclipse is still very much a question that I have as well. But these are some of the plausible, possible, potential answers that I've been looking into.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really interesting. How would the sunset and sunrise over the horizon? How does that work in a flat Earth model? If if the sun, if this is the flat Earth and then the sun's going around this way, wouldn't we just see it as just kind of fading out, or how does the horizons work with that?
Yeah, perfect. Also, day and night. The question you just asked usually goes hand in hand with how come it's day on one side and night on the other, and time zones. How does that work?
Right.
So I made this animation to explain that, based on the research that I was doing. I'm not the originator of this idea. I just created. I wanted to do it for myself. So you got the flat Earth model, and now using a sextant, which I've never used and don't know how to use, but I've been reading about people who have used the sextant to calculate the distance of the sun, and from what I understand, it comes out to the sun being almost about a 40-mile diameter at I think 3,000 miles away in that model. So this is not to scale. Actually, if it was to
Okay, Rob is about correct on that, and I've used one when I was out on my boat in the Pacific Ocean, and that's what I calculated to be about 40 miles in circumference, and the distance that he had mentioned, 3,000 some miles away, or maybe a bit more, but not what NASA says.
Scale, the sun would be smaller. But just to illustrate that.
But who's going to believe us? People believe big liars.
In the flat earther model, at least as I understand it, the sun's about 40 feet across and about 3,000 miles above the Earth. Well, this is how it goes around and creates time zones and all of that, day and night and time zones. Now, this is kind of falling right above the equatorial path right here. This kind of line right here is the equator. How do you explain the seasons, and how do you explain seasons or times of the year when the sun is visible all day long, like in the Arctic, or not at all? And the case with the Antarctic and Arctic, where either the sun is there like constantly or not there at all. Well, according to the flat earther model and according to the Book of Enoch, all the sun does is it tightens its circle a little bit to be a little more in for certain seasons. This time of the year, it's more going around the equator, I guess, and other times of the year it's further out. So it's following a path, and Enoch tells you it's got a path that it has to follow for specific times and gates and whatnot, that apparently whatever it goes through for the seasons and whatnot. So there's that. Now, you've got you're looking at a simple little illustration.
Okay, let me break in for a minute because you can't see this, but I recommend you go to this video. At about 2 hours and 26 seconds into it, you're going to see a really nice animation of the way the Earth would look in a circle model and how the sun rotates on top of it. And it explains it perfectly, and the seasons never, are always the same. And all you got to do is look at it. And if you'll understand that the North Pole is in the center of this, and their fictional South Pole is not in the bottom of a sphere, but basically it is basically an ice wall that surrounds everything. which makes a lot of sense when you look at what Captain Cook found back in the 1700s when he circumnavigated the circle, took 60,000 miles around the rim, and could never find a break in the ice wall. Now, if the Earth is 25,000 miles in circumference, how did he go 60,000 miles? Interesting. But go to this. It's called The Sharpening 073, Rob Skiba and Exposing the Flat Earth Theory. At 2 minutes and 26 seconds, you'll see a really nice animation that'll get you started on this. Then when you start putting the moon in, you'll see how it works perfectly. But anyway, it makes a hell of a lot more sense than what NASA tells you.
Right here. In the real world, this thing is huge. This disk, I mean, if this is the truth, this disk is massively huge. Now, I know from being in aviation and watching aircraft come up over hills that, okay, let's say I'm looking at a hilltop in the distance, and let me undo this here. Okay, say I'm over here. I'm over here, and there's like a mountain range or a hill or whatever over here, and there's a helicopter flying at, let's say, 1,500 feet. Over here, my field of view can't see over this mountain, to the level of where the helicopter is way over here. But as it's coming, I mean, it has this kind of illusion like it's coming up over the mountain, and then going up over my head and then disappearing the same way as the vantage point, as it decreases, it looks like it's going down. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about it the other day. I was trying to catch the sunrise, which is rare because I'm never up. I stayed up late enough to see the sun. I didn't get up to see it. And I was looking. I'm like, okay, from my vantage point in Plano, Texas, I mean, because of buildings and trees and other obstructions, I can only see so far. And even if I'm standing on a mountain looking, my visual ability to see is only so far. And yet, if the sun is beyond that ability to where I can see, because my vantage point is come to an end, it's beyond that, it would have the illusion of coming up toward me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you're looking like this, and it's sort of doing that, it has the illusion. You got to think on a huge scale. I mean, just if we just think on the size of the United States of America, and a bus 40 feet wide, was flying in the sky, you're not going to see it from Massachusetts if you're in California. You know what I'm saying? But as that 40-foot bus starts flying over from Nevada, it might start to become a little bit visible at 40 miles across. You know what I mean? So
that makes.
I'm not sure that solves the problem, but just when thinking about visual perspective and our ability to perceive at a distance, I can see how that could have the illusion of coming up and going down. But here's the other thing that's tripping me up is there are times, I mean, looking at that model of the sun going around the flat plane, I've looked up and seen the sun directly over my head. And we usually say 12 noon. Well, I mean, if the sun's 40 miles across, 3,000 miles up, and it's over the equator, and I'm in the northern hemisphere, North America, how does it look like it's right over me? It seems like I should always be looking at it like, at an angle. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you have the exact same problem. In fact, it's actually worse on a globe. Because if this is the sun and you're up here on the globe, how do you make the sun look like it's right? I mean, the Earth's not rotating this way. You know what I mean? It's rotating.
Right. Yeah.
It's rotating this way. So, I mean, these are like the mind-bending things that you sit there, you're going, my gerbil's running as fast as it can, because all the stuff, the same questions people are asking about, well, how's that work on a flat Earth? A lot of them you got to ask, how's it working on a globe?
Okay, we're going to stop it right there, and I'll pick up with Rob tomorrow. We only have about a minute and a half. But here's my recommendation to everyone on this subject. Start with what you can prove here. Nobody knows what the moon and the sun are like. How really we haven't been there. NASA hasn't been there. It's something that we're going to have to uncover. But start out with the things you can control, and that are horizons, and you can do measurements with sextants that navigators have done for hundreds of years, which I find more reliable than NASA. And start out with the things here on the ground that we can control. And use your common sense when it comes to distances and horizons. And I've got a guy did a test in Monterey, California this weekend I'll bring up on tomorrow's show, which proves that the Earth is not a sphere. It can't be, according to NASA's calculations, with the test this guy did. With a simple laser and a 4-mile stretch of territory in Monterey Bay, Lover's Lane or Lover's Cove. And it's really an amazing test, but it's very simple, and you can do it you can do it yourself. But anyway, start with the things we can't prove, and the things we can't, we can start really questioning and figuring it out. That's my advice. See you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.